Brachim Habayim, welcome, friends of Israel around the United States, around Israel, around the world. My name's Wayne Firestone. We're back with you as part of our twice a week episodes of webinars live from Israel during this unprecedented period of war for Israel, unprecedented on many different fronts, but not uncommon to the Israeli people, the need to come together during a period of tremendous danger. At the American Israel Friendship League, we've committed to redouble our resources to focusing on the people of Israel who are experiencing this all in real time, to understanding the situation as best we can, indeed to hear directly from Israelis about how they're seeing this and what they're doing and what would be helpful from friends of Israel around the world. So we're grateful for all of you who are with us today or have been on with us on other episodes as well. We tend to begin our programming with a question to the audience. And I want to ask people maybe to put something in the chat just so we can continue to sort of monitor this. What is your main source of information so far on the war? Are you hearing about it through specific blogs? Are you reading particular newspapers or cable channels or other sources from Israel or from outside of Israel, international journalists, sources, podcasts, etc.? Curious to hear what is informing your day-to-day sort of understanding of what's happening in the war. As we're sort of lining that up for you, we want to bear in mind that the news doesn't cover everything, and it sometimes moves on very quickly to other stories. The story for us is always about Am Yisrael. It's about the people of Israel and the remarkable things that they do in their daytime capacity, as well as when they're called up from reserves and have to adjust or pivot their own personal lives in a way that really matters. We have today here with us three remarkable people who are very much a part of the response. I want to give each of them an opportunity to just introduce themselves, and then we'll say a little about the organization that they're working with today. So I'm going to start actually with Lital, who I see on screen, and give you an opportunity, and then David and hopefully we'll be joined by Lee at that point. Go ahead, Lital.
Thank you, Wayne. And thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Lital. I was born in Israel, but I'm also American. My dad is American. He came to Israel when he was 10 years old. At my first 10 years of career, I've been to the different systems in Israel. I did 7 years in the IDF as a captain. I actually just got my major 2 years ago in reserves, and the intelligence corps for another 5 years. Did my entrepreneurial leap in 2014, opened my first company, founded my first company named Carbine, which actually changes the way people interact with the different emergency authorities in emergency situations. I moved to the venture capital in 2017, also moved to New York, lived there for the past 6 years, and came back to Israel a year ago, joined Lee, which will introduce herself shortly, at Ant Ventures. And right now, I'm deployed for the past 15 days as an operational officer in the Southern Command.
Wow. In a very short introduction, there's so much there I would love to talk to you about, but I'm also hesitant. One of my colleagues described you as a real life badass. So despite your soft-spoken and wonderfully sophisticated background, we're gracious that you're taking time to share what's happening in your life now. David, let me maybe turn to you for that intro, and then we'll wrap with Lee. I see who's on now.
Oh, David Gilliman, born and raised in Israel, Israeli father, British mother. I spent 5 years in the Israeli Special Forces as a fighter and as a commander, and then another circa 25 years in reserves. I lived in London between 2000 to 2017, running a pan-European real estate business. I resided back in Israel at the end of 2017 and have been living here since. And then approximately 10 months ago, joined the Sisters and Brothers for Israel and the efforts here. Thank you.
Okay, Lee, we've seen, we know you were racing to get home to be able to do this. We're grateful. You have, among other duties, familial duties. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll use that as a segue into talking about brothers and sisters.
Sure. So nice to meet you all, and thank you for hosting us. We're this week, and they both in reserve. So just wish them health and that they will come back quickly. I'm an Israeli, born and raised in Jerusalem. Started my career at from my in Washington, D.C. during the Obama-Netanyahu administration. And then after that, moved to finance, worked for BlackRock for a few years. And 12 years ago till today in venture capital as a partner in a fund, and now established my own fund called End Ventures. And on the day-to-day I invest, and then on the day-to-day in the past 2 weeks with my really amazing colleagues, David, Lital, and our team, we call to reserve a civilian reserve and trying to support immediate needs, but also long-term needs in whatever occur from the fields in Israel, both for civilians and for soldiers.
Lee, all of Israel, all of arguably the Jewish people on October 7th entered a new world. Tell us a little bit about when you understood and how you were able to mobilize with your colleagues a very immediate response in terms of your own organizational focus. And so take us through that, period of time where that happened.
So basically this organization, as David mentioned, has been existing for about 9 months. It started as a region of kind of oppose and fighting the judiciary reform that was presented in Israel. But on October 7, and has more than 50,000 followers and more volunteers than that. People that have been together for the past year, that been walked together, demonstrate together, and took care of each other. And on the morning of October 7, we understood that something different is going on. Like, none of us really know really what happens, but the pictures, the siren at 6:30 a.m. and then the pictures of cold-blooded terrorists, or thousands of them coming to Israel on their white Toyotas and motorbikes, and then everything. We understood that it's a different magnitude. We didn't know how much until a few hours later. And immediately we responded that we're gonna work together and we're gonna make sure that with the people that we have. And again, today it's the biggest civilian organization in Israel, with more than 50,000 people that are volunteering and about 15,000 daily. And the leverage of the amount of the gratitude help us be the first responders for many, many things. First responders for people that were under fire in Sderot and in Ofakim and in other places before they were a military closed ground. Okay, people were staying alone, elderly, women with kids, that basically, start messaging via WhatsApp. Can you help us? Can you come? Can you take us? And then very, very quickly, we We rescued 12,000 people. And the government, governments as governments move slower. It's not a criticism, it's just the fact. So 1,500 people with jeeps can do evacuation of, tens of thousands of people because they do it quicker. Needs and supplies and mobilization for soldiers. It was Shabbat, it was Simchat Torah. There was no one, and people start getting recruited to the army. How do I get to the base up north or down south? So thousands of people took their private car and took soldiers for all over the country. And this is just the first 12 hours. When we understood the magnitude of the event, then the different requests from the ground start following. And now, and we will talk about it probably in more, we have more than 100,000 refugees, right? We have more than 300,000 soldiers on the field. And we're trying to be there, and we will tell how do we do that and who are the people that are doing it. But basically, it's a really special or magical combination of people with the right spirit, people that join together regardless the political view, and people from the field and from the tech that decided to build a company in 12 hours. And the company is giving answer and help for hundreds of thousands of people in Israel right now.
Well, I'm gonna put a pause on that very image, the idea of essentially creating a company in 12 hours and then reaching a national scale in terms of delivery of services. We've got a couple of video clips that we're going to interplay just to give a sense of some of the initial images and the people that you're working with. So let's bring up the first one, which is just sort of general about the formation of the organization. Then I want to bring David and Lital in to talk about two issues you raised: pivot and speed.
We're now more than a week after the horrible events of October 7th, with more than 1,400 dead, thousands wounded, and tens of thousands of families that had to flee the horror and leave their homes with nothing on them. We are brothers and sisters for Israel, the largest support organization right now in the country. We're a super efficient organization where all the money that we raise goes only to the actual goods that people need. We don't take salaries, and all of our volunteers don't get paid. Every donation you make will go directly to somebody that really needs it. Basically, we work in full harmony with the Ministry of Defense and the Army. We collect requirements both bottom up from the unit, but also top down, making sure that our soldiers have everything they need and that they're ready for what's coming. Two of our top priorities are protective gear and medical equipment. Together with the Army, we work on understanding exactly what's needed and delivering it to our soldiers to keep them safe. Together with your support, we're going to win this war. We're going to help all the families that were affected by the horrors, and we're going to rebuild our amazing country. Thank you very much.
David, based on your business background and your IDF background as a commander in special operations, you know how to move quickly, but this seems like warp speed to even as an Israeli, as an individual, to understand what was happening, and what the extent of the threat was, let alone to be able to be focused and thinking about the critical needs that need to be served. Tell me about that first 24, 48 hours of formation, about how this team of people on screen now were able to figure out what needed to be done and make that happen.
Thank you. I think the fact that this group has known each other and has been established 9 months before gave us good basis. We knew each other, we knew the skill set, we knew the motivation, and we knew that we can create something from almost nothing within a relatively short period of time. The combination of skill set within the team is quite diversified. So we have the leading of the high-tech industry. We have a huge group of guys, all from the special forces, all commanders, all people who are not afraid of taking responsibility, taking risk, and know how to mobilize people. So there's been so much talent and so much motivation and a very large group of people that were willing to contribute to the effort, that all that was really needed at that point in time is to set the goals, the immediate goals, to meet the most immediate requirements. If it's in the first, as Lee mentioned, in the first 24 hours, it was evacuating people. Quite a bit that was done under fire of rockets and terrorists. It's catering for the most immediate needs. And that whole effort has slowly evolved, so people with extensive purchasing experience came in to assist us in filling the gaps for soldiers who were lacking, armors or helmets, etc. It's establishing the whole group of people to try and identify and collate as much detail as possible about the people that have been kidnapped and hostages. We basically put in one group 300 tech people with experience in big data, in AI, in face recognition, and put all that talent together, where at some point we became actually the source of data for the Ministry of Defense. And this all pretty much happened within kind of first 24, 48 hours.
Lital, I'm interested to explore with you, in part because of your background as a co-founder of a tech company, in addition to the VC work you're involved in now with other tech ventures. When Startup Nation was written, the premise was largely about how Israelis who developed very good technology and team-based skills from the army were able to then use those very same skills to spin off technology companies that had value in the commercial marketplace. It seems to me that what you all have done is sort of the inverse. You've literally taken from now your experiences and skill sets that make things work at different scales, and you figured out immediately how to apply that to a solution that was needed during a crisis on the home front. And I don't know if you all feel that's remarkable, but for me, it feels very remarkable that this sort of loop of experiences, in a sense that you've been forced into, has allowed you to be as adept at creating this new organization. And I think you're wearing your IDF uniform, or at least your jacket, as we're speaking. So which hat are you wearing? Which uniform do you feel you're wearing at the moment, with brothers and sisters, in terms of the people you're working with, as well as the people you're serving in this capacity? I know you're doing this as a civilian, but I'm sort of curious how those two different hats come into play for you with your vast experience.
So firstly, I completely agree. You're very much correct. I think all of us are using the skill set that we capture along the years. I can say personally, on my own skill set, that I think most of it was developed in my military service. And after 10 years in the tech world and the VC world, right now it all combines. And I can share what I felt on Saturday morning and how it all came to the lifting spirit of what the organization is doing. And I'm actually at the front, as I mentioned. I've been deployed 15 days ago. This is my uniform, my actual uniform, and I'm literally down south right now. I found a very quiet room outside the mess and the chaos right here. But yeah, on Saturday morning, I woke up to a horrifying reality, like all of us over here. And actually, before I've even brushed my teeth, I've already gotten the order to immediately come to the unit down south. Took me a few hours because most of the roads were closed. nobody actually understood what happened. And I can sadly say that when I arrived to the base, I learned that it was not even a fraction of the disaster that I've understood from a little bit of information that came through those few couple of hours in the beginning. I can tell you that today, with everything that's happening in the IDF, in the front, the largest support, or again, the moral support that I'm getting is from this organization, because I really do feel that we're in good hands. Not because of our government, not because of anything else, but truly because of our civilians and organizations like Brother and Sisters for Israel that are just doing magical work and combining all of those skill sets that you mentioned earlier, and also tech capabilities that are just allowing us to be in the front and share the right information with the world.
Lee, you referred earlier to, the fact that many government services are slow under the best of circumstances. Under the worst of circumstances, they sometimes are painfully at an impasse. And so you're thinking about this as like a company, for a nonprofit company. Obviously, these are volunteers. It's not paid staff. It's people who are doing this out of a love of their country. What have you learned already that you are really good at doing in this context? And maybe you could give some examples of the kind of services that you've been able to identify and then leverage to provide support for specific audiences.
So, as we said, this is not just an organization. It's besides Lital mentioned, it's medical people. By the way, what she didn't mention, that she's almost 7 months pregnant and serving, which I said to you, really. And her mother is in the army, and her father is in the army, both commanders, and her brother is in the army. So this is the situation like right now in many, many houses. We also have Ambassador Gillerman with us, and serving Israel for many, many years. So what I wanted to say is that this organization has people from across sectors, across experience, across ages, and that are focus and experience, their business experience, work experience is very diverse, meaning that we can take a lot of projects and manage it from the beginning till the end. I'll give you an example. We had 100,000 people evacuating from the south. By the way, now the north is being evacuated. So we evacuated a few tens of thousands before the government came in, and we matched them. We understood, okay, we can evacuate them, but where would they go? They don't have yet the funding. So we build a system with the tech people and find them a matching family in a safe place. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 or 3, I'm talking about thousands. For example, after they were evacuated, there are thousands of cows that need to be milked. Israel is a producive country. We need to pick our apples, and we need to make sure that the fields are being worked out. So every day you have 1,000 people from our organization driving south and do what they can do in the field and milking cows. My great uncle is 73. When he was 23, that's what he did in a kibbutz as a volunteer. And he and 15 of his friends went to Kfar Aza. So I think the ability of across sectors and across expertise are enabling us to focus, as I said, on the short term. But David, we probably would elaborate, maybe that should be the next question, but whatever you decide, of the long-term projects. We're going to have a lot of refugees outside of their home for a lot of time. What are we going to do? Education, psychological, post-trauma. So the combination of being in the field and act quickly, but also the magnitude of the people and the organization of thinking kind of more long-term. And, the ability and the need and the must to work with Jewish organizations across the world, not only for the funding, because the funding is really important, because we couldn't do it. We need funding, but also from the understanding that something has changed in Israel dramatically from October 7. Something happened to our society before for many, many years. And we have a rare opportunity now to try and see how we build or rebuild our country. And this is the agility that the Startup Nation have. And this is the agility that Jewish organization in the US will need to adopt to work with us on be able to rebuild it and think differently from before.
Well, Lee, I'm really glad you gave the example of the cows, because I think it's very hard to imagine what it means when 300,000 people are mobilized away from their day-to-day jobs, because they are people who milk cows, and there are people who bring the mail, and there are people who work in hospitals. They have day jobs that someone is not doing. So there is immediately a vacuum about those activities in every sector, because the Israeli IDF pulls from everyone. So they're missing teachers, they're missing others. So a very big and immediate task relates to just figuring out, how to relate to those challenges and matching them up with people, as in the case of your uncle, I think, of who could actually help out, volunteer, and be a resource in this, which is amazing. David, I'm going to pass the baton to you on Lee's question about the more long-term implications of an Amutah that has not asked for permission, but is collaborating with various government agencies and otherwise to do good deeds, to help and address critical functions that under other circumstances might or might not be provided directly by the government. But how do you see this evolving? Are you already able to map out certain areas where you feel like, as Lee said, we need to rebuild the country in a way that is adaptable to the ability of Israelis today to function at a very high level and to meet expectations that are global? You refer to your own period of time of work in Europe, and you've seen systems out and in the United States. You all have seen other systems functioning. How do you envision that this moment is going to create an opportunity for these kind of long-term changes in services that are delivered to Israelis, and how that might work?
Thanks, Wayne. If I may, I'll spend kind of 60 seconds on how this effort has evolved from my point of view, and how the path to more kind of medium long-term projects is actually taking shape now. So, back that Saturday, again, woke up at 6:30 a.m. to this terrible reality. By the end of the day, three of my good friends lost their eldest son in a battle. A friend of mine lost his daughter that was murdered in the party. Two colleagues of mine from my team in the army got shot. God bless, they're alive. Went through surgery. Both got shot in trying to protect their homes. And I think my experience on that day is shared by thousands and millions of people across the country, where it's not just something we read or saw on the news. We all feel it in the closest circle to us, if not within our kind of immediate families. And with that course, that basically people realize that we are in a major crisis, and hence started seeking ways to contribute to the effort. So first 24 hours, evacuation, being out there and trying to be helpful. Next 24 hours was very much focused on catering for food and immediate equipment to the people that have been evacuated and soldiers. Next kind of 48 hours, kind of joined forces with Lee and seeking ways to find funding, because all that mega operation that suddenly was created required huge amount of funding where the government wasn't there to assist. And we seeked and continue to seek for external funding sources in order to cater for the exponentially expanding needs. Later evolved into planes with equipment and donations coming out of the US with hundreds tons of equipment, but needed to be received and then distributed to whoever really needs it. And that's kind of how it evolved and where we are today, where we feel that the army, to a large extent, came out of its shock. The equipment is starting to flow into the right places. Soldiers are starting to get exactly what they require. But we actually identify the more kind of medium, long-term requirements. And it's primarily driven by the people that have been evacuated from their houses. We are talking about, it's almost impossible to quantify. We're anywhere between 100 to 500,000 people that have been or will be by the end of the week dislocated from their homes. And we are trying to create a more efficient, automated system to ensure that those people and those kids and those families are actually being fed and fed well, while a lot of those families have no income because the business is closed or because the father or mother have been called to the army. So that's a major effort that we are now trying to put into place. And that requires the expertise of various groups within the organization we put in place. It's anywhere from funding to catering to mobilizing the stuff, up to mental health treatments to the various people and families we interact with. So when I think about the key efforts, which have a bit of a more kind of medium long-term impact, it's the system we are putting into place to cater for large communities. The system we put in place in trying to bring funding in, and in some cases matching between the funds and a specific cause or expenditure. And I would say the other fairly important and goal that we currently put in place is significantly enhancing the capabilities of the local communities to protect themselves and also provide for first aid. So as you might know, in Israel, it's very difficult to obtain a gun. You need to go through specific tests and license and certain background. It's close to impossible, actually, unless you had a significant military background to obtain a license. And what we've seen that on Saturday, the people who actually were fighting for the first few hours and protecting their homes were individuals. We are also concerned about the northern border exploding. This is a war of a different magnitude, and we anticipate dozens, probably hundreds of thousands of people being impacted physically within the country. And this is not something that the existing health system will be able to attend and cater for. So both in terms of getting the medical equipment, packaging it, creating those kits, and also providing the people on the ground with the capabilities to provide first aid.
Lital, when you saw the magnitude of the refugee issue growing as evacuations and other needs became nationwide, not just in the South, but also the North, and and to some cities as well beyond the kibbutzim in the area initially. I don't know exactly what your Carbine software does other than the description of cloud-based public safety. Were there aspects of what you already knew from what you've built that you sort of were already thinking, hey, that could be captured in a certain way? It's one thing to say you're building a company over 12 hours, but in the case of the effort you're doing, it seems to me that you had to begin somewhere with some kind of infrastructure that would then grow. And I'm wondering what from your private from your venture that you co-founded, what sort of kicked in, and were you allowed to just sort of accelerate quickly in building that kind of infrastructure?
In terms of Carbine, we actually used the technology in the first 3 days to help locate families and people that were hiding from the kibbutzim and from the party. So a lot of our technology was used directly with the people out in the field. And specifically with the organization, I can say that all of the efforts that were done in the beginning were just adapted as we moved along. I mean, every need that came from the field, I directed it straight to Lee. Everybody that were asking me questions about what's happening, where are the people, there were a lot of question marks and a lot of chaos at the beginning. And it really felt like nobody was even having the bandwidth to deal with everything in parallel, specifically not our government and not the IDF. They had different things in mind at that specific moment. And I think that brothers and sisters were just the first aid that I could direct people to. And other than them, nothing else helped. That's actually the truth.
I want to bring up the second video that we wanted to run, which talks specifically about one of the most difficult issues of identifying who the kidnappees are. The front page of the New York Times today, Sunday edition, has the picture of the set table in Tel Aviv, awaiting their return. This is a very heavy topic on a human level for those of us who, as almost all Israelis in close-knit family, are connected in some way. David shared some of the people he's connected with in the first few hours. I know that each of you has are connected to people as well, and certainly the kidnapped families at the moment, even with the release, the great news of the release yesterday of two of them alive, is weighing very heavily on our hearts. So I want to play this segment just to get your explanation of how this is actually, what the challenge that you're actually dealing with on the technical level to be able to try to identify who the people are that are kidnapped, and where you all are in that part of this monstrous challenge.
קוראים לי פרופסור קרין נהון, הרמנו מערך של אזרחים מתנדבים, יש פה מאות אנשים, כשהמטרה היא בעצם לנסות לאתר מידע על נעדרים מתוך הידע שנצבר בתוך הרשתות החברתיות. המידע הולך בעצם או לפקע"ר או הולך לממ"מ, וזאת המטרה בעצם. ולהחזין את החזרה את המידע לתוך המוסדות המדינה. האמת היא מרגש לראות את עם ישראל עוזר בצורה הכי מדהימה שיש.
I don't know which one of you wants to take this one, but what in practical terms does this particular exercise look like, as painful as it must be for those working on it? The results obviously are are critical in helping identify sources for trying to relieve. Oh, go ahead, Lee.
So that was an headquarter that was active for 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks to identify most of the cases. 500 people, 24/7, different tech unit, different elite information units, led by Dr. Nahon that you saw in the movie. And they worked with the authorities and worked with the government all the time and got to a few breakthrough. If, for example, she's talking, I'll send you in the link, the New York Times movie about it. But she's talking about a family that in the terrorist camera, you see that they've been taking the children, but they didn't know what happened to the children after the tape. And then in 4 days, they actually build an algorithm based on AI and on image recognition, like a system that usually takes, funding and a lot of time to build. And in 4 days, they build it to be able to process hundreds of thousands of videos and pictures from personal phones, from the terrorists, from the darknet, from the opennet. And in one of the movies, they saw what happened the 2 minutes after. So the bodies are still missing, but they found out that the kids are not alive. And, very clearly. So stories like that, some of them are, it's missing and kidnapping people. So most of the stories are not cheering in any way. We don't know even what they do to them in Gaza. We know some, by the way. So this is what they did 24/7. And then after we got all the movies and everything that we can do to help the authorities, we don't have this HQ anymore, and hopefully we won't need it.
David and Lital, can you talk a little bit about just the effect on morale? We know that this, on the one hand, it has motivated and unified Israelis. On the other hand, this has a human effect when you see both civilians and soldiers, presumably, who are also captives now. And I'm curious if how you can share how you individually and some of the soldiers who you've commanded, how they hold up and how they react on a human level to this atrocity and human rights violation.
Well, I can say that from what I'm getting in the field, the Israeli spirit is unbreakable. And in the face of this tragedy, we have witnessed acts of bravery that are just unique and extreme. We are a very resilient nation, and we will overcome this. We will overcome this very, very dark chapter. And I'm pretty confident that we will win and prevail. And the only thing I can say is that I think, regardless of our political opinions, I think we all need to support the basic elementary values of humanity and our society, and just stand behind what's right.
David, I saw a phrase popping up in a lot of my feeds from Israeli television and from some print newspaper ads, Yachad Ninatseach. And could you share, translate and explain what you think that means, and if that is sort of a motto that may stick from this period, or if it's too early to tell?
Sure. I mean, in trying to convey to the world what we've been through, people have been drawing comparisons. This is our 9/11, this is our Pearl Harbor, this is the worst day since the Holocaust. I think all are horrific, sad, deeply sad events. But I think this October 7th is quite unique in the sense that on top of the brutality and the pictures and the sheer number of killings, we have the hostages, which is always been a very sensitive thing for our nation when soldiers are hostages, and probably exponentially when it's civilians and children and women. But on top of that, and I would even say way beyond that, we still have a war going on. We are fighting for our existence. This is not just a fight against a terror organization on our southern border. We have Iran essentially on our northern border. We have the West Bank. We have missiles that have been shot yesterday, 14 missiles shot out of Yemen. Again, essentially is Iran. This is a mega regional war that we are coping with. And when I look at the nation, the country, my people, after a day or two of shock, the country totally united together. And after being somewhat politically bifurcated for the last few years, for various political reasons, which I won't go into, suddenly you've seen everybody unite together, everybody volunteering, everybody doing whatever they can to contribute to the effort. And as Lital said, the power of the spirit of the people now is something that I haven't seen in Israel for many years. And we strongly believe that the power of our unity and the essence of our country is what gonna enable us to prevail. We're sure that we will prevail. We just want to make sure that as we fight the war and help the army win, we also do whatever we can within our means to cater for the citizens of Israel, the people that have been evacuated, and try to minimize as much as we can the number of casualties within the country.
Well, we're all in awe, and we're going to pivot on this program for the last piece to getting a better understanding. Many of our questions came in to ask about people who want to be supportive now, people who are living outside of Israel, and in what ways there may be opportunities to do that. I think the best, I was fortunate, David, to interview your dad a couple of days into the war, just after President Biden had delivered his speech, and I remember your dad talking about Ambassador Gillerman talking about really one of the most important things from a president to speak with such moral clarity to what's happening, and then to back that up with resources in the form of two battleships that are in the region now, and obviously more that has needed to come. I want to show a segment that we just saw that talks about the recent visit of Secretary of State Blinken and an encounter that he had with some of the survivors. So let's put up that final video.
This is Khalil, my boyfriend. We are survivors from the music rape. Yes, we lost a lot of our friends, close friends, and lots of family members. There are a lot of people that we know that are kidnapped and now in Gaza. Yeah, we went through horror. We're strong here, we're powerful here, in this place, now in Tel Aviv and everywhere.
We're thinking of them and trying to do everything we can.
So I would like to get a little bit of a sense. Lee, I see you on screen, but what's going to help now in this stage that you could envision, recognizing that the needs are changing, and are there specific things that you want to suggest to our audience that would be helpful that they do or that they don't do? People are saying they're getting requests for sending shoes or sending, I've seen chargers for iPhone, all sorts of different things that are happening randomly. And again, you guys have to do some triage, obviously, as to what is most helpful to focus on. And I'm wondering if any of this at this stage you envision as being helpful.
So there are many requests, but think about, how Israeli works, right? They ask, and then they ask another 20 people. So we have a lot of shoes right now, which is good. So I would kind of conclude with one thing. I actually read, somebody wrote it, and somebody wrote, when I woke up on October 7th, my mind told me it's Yom Kippur War. At the end of the day, my heart told me it's Babi Yar from the Holocaust. But in Babi Yar, we didn't have a state. And this is, I think, a very strong statement of where we are kind of from an existential point of view. And in Babi Yar, we didn't have a big Jewish, supportive, strong community in the US. So I want to ask you for two things. You need to be loud and clear of telling our stories and of being out there, which is not easy these days, and making a clear voice of what's really happening in Israel. Not only through your social media, but also to your representative, wherever they be. This is one thing. And the second thing is that what we need right now is, support and connection, support from funding perspective, because it's going to be a very long battle. Maybe first external and internal, and then internal. And we want to be engaged. We want you to keep in touch with us and talk to us and keep on being connecting for many weeks and months and whatever needed to keep a strong tie between you guys that are out there and us, and being our ambassadors. So this is kind of the two requests. Help us with resources and help us in telling our story, because the war going to be long, and the legitimacy and what we can do probably will be affected by that. So this is kind of, and I would love, Lital, David, if you guys can add from your thoughts.
Please.
I totally agree with Lee. I think that's the important message. I also want to thank everybody on the call, but even more than that, just thank your president and America for what they've been doing for our nation in history, but especially over the last few days. You asked me before about moral, and when President Biden gave his speech, it's impossible for me to convey to you what impact it had on the Israeli people and how it lifted up the spirit and the confidence, knowing that we are not alone here against the rest of the world. We have the United States, we have a true friend that's there for us. That had a tremendous impact on moral here in the country. And there are no words to express the level of appreciation for the support that we're getting. And it's, for administration, but it's essentially for all American people and everybody who's attending this call. We are very thankful and appreciative for that. And we know that there is a lot of willingness to try and help and send over stuff and equipment. One of the things that we try to do as an organization is filter through that and make sure that only what's required is actually being bought. I know of, armors that have been acquired for millions of dollars that don't meet a certain standard and just stuck at the airport, you know? So I think that if whoever wishes to help and contribute, we are there to have this dialogue, to guide them, say this is needed, this is not needed. Actually, we have that project. Here's what it's going to cost if you wish to contribute towards a specific funding. We are a group of hundreds of volunteers. Nobody gets paid. Everybody have put their day job aside to contribute all their time for this effort and for fighting for Israel and help our army win. And every single dollar that comes goes straight to a very specific, well-defined, well-vetted cause.
Lital?
I very much agree with Lee and David. I maybe would just add a quote that I heard in the past week that stayed with me. Somebody said that if someone says it's raining and another person says it's dry, it's not our job to quote them both. It's only our job to look outside the window and find out which one is true. So I really do feel like you people are our voice from outside this country, and I hope that you'll scream it out, because we really, really need your help.
Thank you for that reflection, and to all three of you, literally brothers and sisters, for your service on multiple fronts. I'm going to close out actually by bringing back our chairman of the Israel board of the American Israel Friendship League, and now he's dressed as also a dad. I think on a Sunday. We could have called this also sons and daughters. Ambassador Gillerman, how does it make you feel seeing this next generation of talented Israelis stepping up in a way that you probably couldn't have figured out, or I couldn't have figured out, but they figured out and took responsibility for? I'm going to give you the last word today.
Well, thank you, Wayne. First of all, as chairman of the Israeli board of the America-Israel Friendship League, I'm very grateful to the league, to you, and to everybody who really made this meeting possible. I think at the same time, I second my son's and everybody's words about our gratitude to the American people and to President Biden. His speech, both in Israel and even before that, was probably the most pro-Israeli speech any American president ever gave. And the spirit he brought with him to Israel gave us strength and made us realize that we have a friend. And we have a friend not only in the White House, but throughout America. At the same time, I'm very, very proud today to be Israeli, because, you know, I'm not objective about 1/3 of the trio which we've seen today, but you have seen the best of Israel. And if you multiply that by 15,000, you will realize that what we've seen today is truly one of the most creative, excellent, patriotic movements that this country has ever created. It's truly an example of the beauty, the creativity, the excellence, and the compassion of Israel at a time when we need it most. You know that President Weizmann said that in Israel, the impossible we do at once, miracles take a little bit longer. I think that the brothers and sisters for Israel are a miracle. They happened in an instant and are making the impossible possible at one of our toughest times. So I can only share my great pride in being Israeli at this moment, and at the same time, my great gratitude for our great friends across the ocean, as exemplified by President Biden and by the America-Israel Friendship League and the American people. So these are tough times. They're very tough times. It won't be easy. It may be long and painful. But because of all these things, at the end of the day, we shall prevail and we shall overcome and we shall win. And Israel at the end will be stronger and better than ever.
Well, it goes without saying that in tough times, you want your friends around. And this organization was formed over 50 years ago by non-Jews and Jews alike who defined their relationship around friendship and in good times and in hard times. And these are hard times. You want your friends around and you want them to know what we're going through. We heard today directly about what not only Israelis are suffering, but how Israelis are mobilizing, not only in the military, as if that wouldn't have been enough, but also mobilizing on the domestic front as a society to come together to help those in need, to help those who are displaced and or uncertain of the safety and whereabouts of family members. This is a remarkable heavy lift at a historic moment when it'd be possible to just think about your own needs and feelings, but instead has ignited an aspect of Startup Nation that we couldn't have expected on the one hand, but we're grateful that you all are in action in the way that you are. A quick program note for so with great gratitude for everyone that was here today, and we wish you good health and safety in your exercise and success. David, Lital, Lee, in your efforts going forward. We'll be very curious to follow your activities and see how our network can be helpful to get to both of the goals that you put out there as being important at this time. They obviously will change and potentially grow as the war continues.
Wayne, maybe just one quick word,
Sure.
because I think we all know that this actual webinar was initiated by Jonathan Barsaid, who is our president, and I think we should thank him for making this possible. I think it was enlightening, enriching, and truly remarkable for everybody who watched it. So thank you, Jonathan, for that.
Yes, and Jonathan, also born of Israeli entrepreneurial blood, has pushed forward an understanding not only of the need for friends, but of how to actually express that friendship. And I think that's what we'll be looking to do to define with our colleagues at the American Israel Friendship League, both in Israel and throughout the United States and around the world in the coming weeks. We know a lot of people have questions about what happened, and we've pushed off some of that, but not indefinitely. On Wednesday, we'll be joined in a fireside chat with Dr. Yossi Vardi, with General Amos Yadlin. Yossi tends to ask a lot of direct questions, and I hope those of you, not just out of curiosity, but those that really want to go deeper into an understanding of some of the military intelligence issues related to October 7th and to our current realities that we're looking at, you will have a unique opportunity to hear really an incredible conversation. So come back on Wednesday on the 29th, a week from Sunday. We'll be joined by a leading expert in international law. We know there have been many questions asked about humanitarian law, international law. We'll be bringing on experts related to that topic a week from now. Please watch in your inbox for invitations coming up. We wish everyone a safe week. All those in harm's way, in particular, our prayers for safety, and wish everyone a week of peace. Lehitrod.